The war in the Atlantic was a war of shadows, depths, and cold, unforgiving mathematics. For the German U-boat crews, the Atlantic was a hunter's paradise in the early years of wide-open space, to deliver the lethal sting of the torpedo. But, as the Allies cracked the Enigma code, and the surface forces learned the hard, brutal lessons of anti-submarine warfare, the paradise became a graveyard. By the summer of 1943, the odds were turning steeply against the wolf packs. This is the story of one such boat, caught in the turning tide, thousands of miles from the familiar hunting grounds of the North Atlantic. This is the enigma of U-513. It was a Type IXC U-boat, a long-range oceanic cruiser, the kind of boat built for distant patrols. Far from the Bay of Biscay, her mission, deep in the South Atlantic, off the coast of Brazil, was a strategic move by Admiral Dönitz to keep pressure on Allied supply lines, routes carrying rubber, minerals, and other vital resources from South America to the industrial heartlands. The Brazilian coast, vast, and until recently lightly defended, offered a new theater for the U-boat war. U-513's commander was a man of some renown even before this last patrol. Kapitänleutnant Friedrich Guggenberger, a formidable officer, he had already earned the Knight's Cross with oak leaves for sinking the aircraft carrier HMS Ark Royal while commanding a different U-boat. He was, in short, one of the elitemen the High Command trusted with a long, dangerous mission. He was an officer of fierce discipline, tactical brilliance, and a reputation for survival. Guggenberger took command in May of 1943. He left the French port of Loyang for the boat's fourth and final patrol, carrying a crew of 53 men. Their objective, the Brazilian coastline, a new front in an old war. The patrol was initially a success. In the treacherous waters of Santa Catarina and São Paulo, U-513 found targets and hit them hard. On June 21st, the Swedish freighter Venezia neutral ship in non-neutral waters, carrying Brazilian coffee and beans, was sunk. Days later, the American tanker Eagle was damaged. Then came the attacks that drew blood and national fury. On July 1st, the small Brazilian coastal steamer Totoya was torpedoed. 7 lives were lost, a stark, painful reminder to the Brazilians that the war was on their doorstep. 2 days later, the American Liberty ship Elihu Washburn went down. And finally, on July 16th, the American Richard Caswell was sunk, adding 9 more names to the casualty list. 6 ships sunk, to damage the successful haul for a boat operating in such a remote area. Guggenberger and his crew had executed their mission with deadly efficiency. But in doing so, they had stirred a hornet's nest. The Allies, already having invested heavily in anti-submarine patrols off Brazil, intensified their efforts. Utilizing the air bases Brazil had allowed the U.S. to establish, the hunters were now closing in on the successful predator. The day was July 19, 1943. U-513 was positioned near the coast, southeast of São Francisco do Sul. The sun was high. The South Atlantic swell was gentle, and the U-boat had just surfaced. Perhaps for a routine battery charge, or perhaps simply to gulp the fresh, unpressurized air necessity after days of submerged hunting. In the skies above, a U.S. Navy Martin PBM-Mariner flying boat, nicknamed the Nickel Boat from Patrol Squadron VP-74, was on a routine patrol. Its pilot was Lieutenant Junior Grade Roy S. Whitcomb, an airman trained in the new, aggressive tactics of air-sea anti-submarine warfare. The Mariner was a formidable Beaster twin-engine amphibian, capable of long patrols and carrying a devastating payload of depth charges. Whitcomb spotted the surfaced U-boat, a dark, lean shape on the water, too large to be a fishing vessel, too quick to be anything but a predator. The alarm was raised on the U-boat's bridge, a shrill, piercing sound that cut through the tropical air. The sudden emergency forced a desperate, instant reaction. Guggenberger, a man who lived by the clock of the deep, knew that a surfaced U-boat was a sitting duck. The crew scrambled to dive, to flood the tanks, to turn the boat into a silent, shielded creature of the abyss. Whitcomb, in the Mariner, didn't hesitate. He swung the massive flying boat into a sharp, attacking dive. His objective was to hit the boat before it could disappear beneath the surface to catch it in the deadly moment of crash diving. The Allied accounts, drawn from Whitcomb's official report and post-war analysis, paint a clear, decisive picture. The Mariner dropped a string of depth charges precisely as the U-boat began its frantic descent, just as it banked to starboard in a desperate evasive maneuver. The depth charges detonated right on target, close to the hull. In the official narrative, the sinking was instantaneous. The plane circled back, the pilot peering down into the disturbed water. Just 10 seconds after the explosions, there was no sign of U-513, only a swirling mass of oil, wreckage, and ominously, a handful of men struggling on the surface. Whitcomb dropped 2 rubber rafts and life jackets, then radioed his base for a rescue vessel. The U.S. Navy rescue vessel, the seaplane tender USS Barnegat, arrived and picked up 7 survivors. The rest of the crew, 46 men, were gone. Among the rescued was Kapitänleutnant Friedrich Guggenberger. The official record was closed. U-513 sunk, July 19, 1943, by depth charges from a U.S. Navy PBM Mariner. A clean, clinical victory in the anti-submarine war. The initial Allied interrogation of 5 Lasingard survivors revealed a critical failure in U-513's anti-aircraft defense during the attack. Despite being equipped with a 3.7 cm gun and a 20 mm cannon, part of ongoing upgrades to counter Allied aircraft, the U-boat's defenses proved insufficient against the sudden assault, contributing to the boat's rapid sinking and the crew's desperate struggle. This is what the survivors said.
We saw the plane coming. The commander, he gave the order, fire both guns. But the 20 mm, it jammed after only a few rounds. It was useless. We were blind.
This is what the second survivor said.
The explosions were immediate. Not far away, but right against the hull. The pressure was immense. Lights went out. Water was everywhere, pouring in from the bow.
This is what Guggenberger said.
I was thrown into the water with great force. When I surfaced, the boat, it was already gone. I saw the plane and the men struggling. I did not hear the full force of the explosions, but I felt the entire boat lurch, crack. It was not a dive. It was a tomb door slamming shut.
The official report says U-513 sank in 10 seconds, but inside it was an endless nightmare flash of light, a roar of water, then darkness. The true fate remains unclear. Was it sunk outright by the plane, or crippled and forced into a fatal maneuver? Most of the crew perished, trapped miles from home. Now resting at the South Atlantic's bottom, U-513 takes its secrets and the haunting truth of its final moments into the deep.